we have Paul Roselli, who is running to be Rhode Island governor. Paul values people and policy over politics. He is an advocate for green jobs, a fair immigration policy, a livable wage, and policies that protect reproductive rights. In addition to his work as a documentary filmmaker and content producer, he has served as a lobbyist and grassroots organizer for local, state, regional, and global policymaking. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you to Indivisible, and thank you for being here tonight. So far, you've heard a lot of words, and I've got a lot of words too. But instead, let's chat. Let's talk. Let's talk about the past few years, the past few months. How about the past few hours, where a big company just got bigger, where we're still in the midst of a crisis when it comes to giving out federally mandated services. Let's talk about that we still haven't resolved 38 studios. I'm Paul Roselli. I'm a progressive Democrat. I've been told that means that I'm a liberal who acts. And I think that's what I am. For the past 20 years, in my adult life, I've acted. I've appeared in front of hearings and State House rallies, whether it be in the House and the Senate. I'm the guy who stopped the Big River Reservoir project. I'm the guy who helped create probably the best wetlands bill in the Northeast. I did it through direct action. I'm also the guy who has 2 children, a daughter and a son, and I never want my daughter to feel less than my son. So I'm a big proponent of fair and equal pay and play. I'm 66 years old. I'm on Medicare. I love Medicare. It's a single-payer health care plan that I don't have to worry about spending part of my co-pays and the amount of money I pay to get the insurance for someone who makes $8.3 million a year. Recently, I signed up for Social Security. Now, I'm telling you all this because we're an older society. We're an older state. I got into the race for a lot of reasons. Let me tell you the first reason. I was in Chicago, and while I was in Chicago, I was attending a Bernie Sanders People's Conference, I think it was. And while I was in Chicago, I learned that our governor was also in Chicago at that same time. However, our governor was there for a totally different reason. The governor was there to collect a check from the very people that I had been fighting for the past 2.5 years up to that point. You may have heard about this power plant in the northwest corner of Rhode Island. I'm the guy who took that not in my backyard message and took it to a statewide issue, made it a statewide issue. I turned that statewide issue into a regional issue by getting the EPA involved, by getting the Army Corps of Engineers involved. I turned it into a global issue by making sure that people who had been to the Paris climate talks knew about that power plant in the northwest corner of Rhode Island. Yeah, I'm an activist. But I'm also a humanist. I believe in social justice. I believe that the issues surrounding the LNG tank in Providence are the same issues that involved in the northwest corner of Rhode Island. We have been ignored. And I'm tired of being ignored. Just like that governor in Chicago who got that check from Michael Polsky, the head of Indivisible, the very people that I have been, the very organization that I've been fighting for nearly 2 years. I was completely ignored. Medicaid folks are being ignored. The folks who have to sign up for mandated, federally mandated services through this UHIP program are being ignored. You know the way I'm going to solve that issue? We give paper and pencil to each one of the administrators at that office and ask people to register people with paper and pencil. Get them their benefits, and then we'll worry about the computer problem. I'm not a big fan of corporate welfare. Corporate welfare to me stinks. It just doesn't make any sense in a society where small businesses are hurting. I have two friends of mine, Linda and John, in Johnston. They own a Chinese restaurant. Linda's grandmother passed away and gave the restaurant to Linda. Linda and John pay about $12,000 in permitting fees each and every year. Local, municipal, state, federal permitting fees to operate that business every year. What do they get from the state? Nothing. That's going to change. So, way back in November 2017, I decided to run as a progressive candidate for governor, for a state office that I know I can manage better than our current governor. That I know I can look at the people in their eyes and listen to their voices and say, you will be heard. You absolutely will be heard. Because I know what it feels like to be ignored. I know what it feels like to have 16,000 people in the northwest corner just brushed aside. I know what it feels like to have close to 100,000 people in the city of Providence and Fields Point along Allen's Avenue, completely ignored. So I'm out running, and about an hour ago I was at Rhode Island College. And it was a forum. It was called the Women's Fund Forum. And on the panelists were 5 men. 5 men running for governor. And I'll name them because these are names that you know. Giovanni Feroci, Spencer Dickinson, Luis Daniel Munoz, and Matt Brown. I know all of them very well because I took the time since January of 2018 to get to know them, because I wanted to know who these people were. So during this forum, we talked about a lot of issues. One of the issues that came up right at the end was women's equity, gender equity. How do we manage? Like, what does it look like? Like, if we were to look in the future 4 years from now, what would that picture look like? And I said this. I said, look, here's what I think it should look like 4 years from now. There should be 5 women on this panel, and there should be a room full of men in the audience. That's what that picture should look like. I believe in universal health care. I don't think there's any way around it. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I traveled not all the globe, but a lot of it. And I learned about health care, the right health care, in Norway. In Norway, health care is universal. The reason I was there was to film a documentary on brain cancer, the deadliest of all disease, of all cancers. And they take care of people. They take care of people not only for the disease, but the family. And make sure that if they want to be productive, if those individuals who have that type of disease want to be productive, they're allowed to remain in their jobs. There's flex time, there's support services, there's money to pay for. I come back here and I interview someone you may know, Dr. Scott Wang. And Dr. Scott Wang was a phlebotomist by trade, and he studied blood diseases. That was his trade, and he got what's called a GDN. And I asked him, so how much is this costing you? How are you able to afford this health care? He said, well, I had to go on complete disability in order to pay for this health care. $3 to $5 million a year. for the services, the drugs, the doctor's visits, the MRIs, in order to pay for this health care. He couldn't afford it. A doctor who had worked in the industry, the business for over 30 years. That's the difference. That's the one thing I want to fix. As governor, the first thing I want to do is universal health care. You know, we can do it. I'm the only candidate who put together a forum with Dr. Fine, Dr. Mark Ryan, and one other doctor who I'm blanking on right now, to all talk about, for candidates, what are the winning messages for candidates to win about health care? And the first one was, it's doable. In Rhode Island, it's doable. I want to answer your question, your question, and your question, and your question about alternative energy. We can do tomorrow. Tomorrow we can have full 100% renewable energy for the production of electricity tomorrow, if we get the political will, if we get the right politicians in that office, whether it be as governor or as representatives of the House. We can do that tomorrow. There is nothing that stands in the way, except those people who think we can. Well, I know something about that because I sit on those committees. I'm a stakeholder in many of those siting and permitting commissions and committees. I was on one of the members of the Energy Facilities Siting Act, so I know about these issues. That's me. I'm an activist. I've got 2 kids who are activists. I believe all of us should be activists. The one thing that is fascinating to me as I travel the state, hearing about what people are doing, is the variety of things people are doing. One thing that our federal government did for us was not only unite us, not only find each other, but told us that the only way out of this is to act. So, I'm in. And I would love to take some questions. Yes, sir.
Somebody asked one of the previous people about clear cutting, solar farms.
Sure.
What's your feeling?
You bet. So when you go home tonight, get out your electric bill. Turn your electric bill over, right? The first page is all the stuff that says how much you owe. Oh, gosh. Turn it over. Look at the second page. That's the breakdown of all those particular items on there. One of them is called an REG program, the Renewable Energy Growth Program. You're paying for clear cutting of forests. Every month you pay about 43 cents per month, an A16 residential customer, for the clear cutting of forests. You're paying for the clear cutting of forests. My suggestion is don't pay your bill. Call up National Grid and say, I'm not doing this anymore. Now, here's the problem, and it is a problem. The Office of Energy Resources flat out refuses to take that REG money and put it towards places where it makes sense to do solar farms, like capped landfills, rooftops, canopies over parking lots, and existing places that are brownfields all throughout our state. The problem is it's expensive to do that. But OER, the Office of Energy Resources, whose members are appointed by the governor, refuse to put those incentives into those programs. And we continue to pay for the clear cutting of forests. Don't pay your electric bill. Tell National Grid, I'm not paying that 43 cents anymore for the clear cutting of forests.
That's only one of about 20 items that we shouldn't be paying for.
The other problem is, and I liken this to a revisit of the past, back to the past. when I hear things about like burning of biomass, the burning of wood pallets and tree stumps and construction material that was proposed this legislative session. When I hear things like we need game preserves where we're going to put in wild boars and go out there and shoot wild boars as game preserves, I think, where are we? Where are we in the scheme of things? Have we, are we drinking the Kool-Aid, or is there something in the Scituate Reservoir? Speaking of the Scituate Reservoir, who in God's name wants to sell the Scituate Reservoir? Nobody in this room, I hope. The Scituate Reservoir is a public entity in a public enterprise that should remain that way. I feel for the burden of Providence, I really do. And I know that story really well, because about 1.5 years ago I was on that committee putting together some legislation that would help move Providence away from the ownership of the Scituate Reservoir. You know where that legislation went? Nowhere. Because the forces in the House and the Senate at the time didn't want to move on. Another question?
Last question?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm a young Democrat, and I feel like...
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm staying here for a while. But I would love to know what are some things that you intend to do to ensure that young people not only stay here in Rhode Island, but we can be successful the way our parents were,
Sure.
be able to buy a home, be able to raise a family, or be able to start a business, however that success defines itself. What will you do to support young people?
You bet. So we've got to stop training people to be just workers. Nothing wrong with being a worker. Nothing wrong with that. We've got to start training people to be entrepreneurs, business leaders, and business owners. And that's where the Department of Training comes into play right from the beginning. That's where the Economic Development Corporation is going to stop giving out money to big corporations, to everything from slaughterhouses to placement services for businesses that go under. We've got to stop giving small businesses. Rhode Island is a small business state. It's always been a small business state. And we've got to maintain that structure here. Just like Linda and John in Johnston, paying close to $12,000 in permitting fees every year. How can any business start? If you're, Rhode Island, let me tell you, Rhode Island's a great place to live. Love the oceans, love the scenery, love our rural areas. Our history is second to none. I know I've traveled the globe, most of the globe as a documentary filmmaker. There is no place like Rhode Island in the rest of the world. We can make changes here. I want you to stay here to help make that change. I want to encourage you to get involved as much as possible. And I want all of you to get involved at this level. You ready? Here's what I want you to do. If you don't like something that somebody says who's in state government, vote them out. Get rid of them. And if you don't like it enough, run yourself. Because that's the only way change is going to happen.